Hello, it's Chad from Higher Living, and today we're talking about self-care strategies. And the importance of this is have a look at what's going on around you. Firstly, it's November. Well, nearly November, approaching the end of another year, and it goes like this. And so many of us can be left thinking, where did it go and how am I still here? Maybe you're not in that situation, but you're seeing what's going on in terms of certain events around the world where there's a continual divide in domestic and international markets. Maybe we're seeing different medias that suggest World War III is approaching. Maybe you've got concerns around the looming interest rate hikes, which you're expected to see, which then places pressure on spending, family, self-worth. Or maybe you're in a situation where it's a little bit of tinfoil hat time and you think we're about to have a whole new reset in terms of the financial systems and structures that have governed us. Regardless of what is going on, traditionally, we've been told how to manage. And we're going to go into that in some details. How it started up with suck it up, drink it down, talk to someone, take something. Now, what do we do? What's that message when we see the significance of mental health continuing to rip apart communities and families? Well, the solution needs to come back to you. There's a famous quote, and I'm going to butcher it in some ways, but it's by Alex Hormozi. The basis of what he says is no one is coming to save you until you become the person that can save yourself. Today, it's all about self-care strategies, higher living. Let's go. Okay, so if I've still got you, you see where we're going today, and it's all about you. It's all about supporting you and giving you practical strategies. Now, we see that the messaging could be go speak to someone, go take different antidepressants. If you want to get that information, there's so much information out there on the internet these days that it's probably best to go somewhere else, because the messaging that we're going to give to you is based on a situation where we have a look at a timeline. We have a look at a timeline of an understanding about how we have had to deal with things. And it has been a case, and there was a wonderful, there's the Beckham documentary at the moment. And if you haven't seen it, it's pretty interesting to see what he has to go through during that period of time before he then comes back to become the English captain. Obviously, there was the incident where he was given a red card. There's a whole lot of things that went on. And for that whole season, the crowd just punished him. And the message that he got back then, which is a good reflection of, it's not that long ago. It's a pretty good reference for us. Beckham United. For some of you, it's a little bit young, but watch the doco. It's not too far away. The messaging that he got was consistent with what we grew up with, my generation, and what our parents probably got. And it's just suck it up. Suck it up. Right? That then probably comes with have a drink. So drink it down. A lot of a reset that we do, and still many of you probably still look at, if you are in a different path where you're more enlightened and you don't need to have these different resets, or you get a reset via nature, you get a reset via psychedelics, you get a reset by cannabis, you get a reset by prayer, you get a reset by exercise, you get a reset in other ways. Awesome. High five. Give yourself that little pat on the back. Not everyone's there yet. Drinking it down, is still a coping mechanism that many of you still do. It gets too much. What do we need to do? Let's drink it down. And it can give you some temporary relief. But what happens? Problems are still there, right? Problems are still there. And if you drink and dial, those problems can get worse. That feels like a good idea. I'm going to give him a call. I'm going to give her a call. I'm going to send her a text. Obviously it's not always the best advice to do that. So don't drink and dial. And drinking it down, does it have its place? Maybe. Are there better ways? I think so. Then we went through this whole situation where it was, you got to talk to someone. Go talk to someone. Go talk to someone. The issue with that, historically, go talk to someone means you got to go talk to someone between 9 and 5. takes out a whole lot of people. Secondly, are you going to connect with that individual if it's in a professional context? Is it culturally specific to what your needs are? Are you going to be given some advice? Are you going to be listened to in the right way? Are you going to be seen through the lens? And certainly finding the right person can be an enormous assistance. There's no doubt about it. But not everyone has the means, not everyone has the time, or not everyone wants to talk about it. And the message has been, you got to talk about it. Maybe there's a time and place for that. Or maybe it's all about what do I do? What do I do? And then it came to, well, if you're not going to talk about it, or you go to talk about it, but you go, hey, take this. Taking this more, we are going through this change, but taking this has been get on an antidepressant, get on an anti-anxiety, get on some anti-anxiety medication, get on some SSRIs, and you're going to start feeling better in 1 to 2 months. And again, some of you may have been there. And the best way that this has been described is think about you're in the gym and you're benching, trying to do a bench press, and you can't lift the weight up. So you can't lift the weight up. So what do you feel like? Feel worthless, that you got no strength, feel weak, you feel isolated, you feel alone, you're there stuck, right? So that antidepressant can come in, give you that component just to lift the weight. And if you lift the weight, then what else happens for you? So there is a time and place for it. But again, is that for you? Maybe. All these things are just to consider. What we're going to talk about today and what you're going to be advised about is being mindful that this is where we have come from. And there's a whole range of advice that you may get around different times. But if you're alone, which is generally the biggest factor, if you feel isolated and alone. So if you can't talk to someone, maybe you drank it down and it didn't go away. Maybe you tried to take different medications and that didn't do anything, and try and suck it up isn't building the resilience and grit. It's intensifying and not going away. And it's little wonder that it's not going away. It's not that we need to be over-diagnosed. Everyone's getting a diagnosis, and diagnoses are increasing. But are you depressed? Are you anxious? Are you stressed? Or is it just a result of your circumstances? And if it's a result of your circumstances, then you've got to change the situation. And changing that situation means that you're going to probably have low mood. Going to be a bit flat. You're going to be probably a little bit anxious and stressed. So these things are going to be normal. But what do you do to change your situation? And this comes back to self-care. And what I believe you need to do is 2 things. Firstly, you've got to understand it. You've got to understand what's going on for you. And then secondly, you need to get a new perspective. And so breaking that down into 2 different pathways, okay, how do you understand your situation? What do you need to do? You need to unpack it. Well, you unpack it with a therapist, right? So that's why the whole idea is why we have been told we've got to go talk to someone. So if you are going to talk to someone and you do talk to a professional that kind of gets it and can sit with your challenges and guide you through it, can be incredibly helpful. Maybe this is a gender thing. Maybe some guys go to talk to mates. And sometimes you don't know what to do with it, right? I think back to when I had cancer and some of the thoughts that would go on. It's pretty hard to be equipped to deal with some of that. And if you're in the situation that you see that I'm referring to, you don't want a savior. You don't want a savior. It's not about being saved or being rescued. Sometimes it's just sharing, right? And that's why the therapist comes in. So talking to someone can be extremely important. But if you don't have someone to talk to, you don't have the means, or it's not your interest, no judgment. But how else can you understand it? So the tools, self-care, one of the things you can do is to try to meditate, right? So try to sit with those thoughts and collate those thoughts in some ways, or just be at peace with them. Breathing exercises can be super important as well. But this is what you've heard already, right? This isn't anything new. We get it. We need to meditate. Tried the headspace thing, didn't work. How did you understand it? What did you do? Anything requires, let's go back to that quote. No one is coming to save you until you become the person that can save yourself. The reason why talking can be helpful, this is some of Jordan Peterson's work, it's because the process of talking to share with the therapist or with the other means that you're constructing it in a way so you're getting it out of here. That's why it can be so important. But if you're looking at self-care, something you can do right now, rather than going, okay, it's coming up for the weekend, I can't get an appointment with anyone, I gotta wait, I gotta go make this payment. How am I going to talk to someone? Do I want, like, so many obstacles and barriers? You can do something right now. Yeah, that right now, journal. So if you are going to meditate, afterwards, the action is required. What came up for me? What came up? What are some of these different prompts? What is annoying me at the moment? What are the 3 things that are my biggest challenges? Where would I like to be? If I was to think about this in a different way, where would I get to? How do I get super dark with myself and tap into the darkest side of me and these deep, intrusive thoughts that come in? How do I get it out of my head and out of my heart and maybe onto some paper? What are some solutions that I can come up with for myself that can make me feel better? What are the things that I'm doing continuously that maintain my positioning? These are all just prompts. If you just go back 45 seconds and you just write out some of them and start asking yourself some questions, see where you get to. Because the biggest thing is what you're doing is understanding it. So you're understanding and understanding. But let's go, right? So as we said before, if you're waking up with your stress, if you're going to bed with your stress, if you're standing around and there's a shadow just coming with you all the time of that anxiety, worry, you're going to get urges and cravings to go back to fall on some of these other strategies that we've had before, which is how have you coped in the past? So the thing is, you need to understand it, but what you need to do is get a new perspective. So how do you get some distance from those thoughts as well? Yeah. And that is a key thing because no one wants to sit with this the whole time. I don't think it's beneficial. Go visit it, understand it, but also get some distance. So how do you get distance? In the world of psychedelics, yeah, you could go do a macro dose of psychedelics. There's no doubt about it. Portion advised, of course. What's the setting going to be? How are you going to prepare that? Where are you going to be for no distractions and to be able to get the best energy? What is your mindset like going into that? And this is the big caution. It's not always the savior. What we know about psychedelics is they can be amplifiers. So if you've got a lot on, they can be amplified. Those issues can be amplified, yeah, which can be challenging. The challenge can lead to growth. So there's no doubt about it. Just be mindful. What are you going to do? Who can you recruit in your inner circle to maybe sit with you or to check in with you? Is there a professional service that you may need to rely on because you don't have those people? Well, how do you rely on yourself? You've got to be safe around these things. Cannabis. If you're new to it and you take a dose of THC, 2 ways can go. 1, I just can't believe I'm seeing something in a different way and I am able to cope with my situation and I do feel better. You may wake up the next day and it's still there, the issues. It's likely if it's the mortgage repayments that you're trying to make and your husband or wife is in a situation where they may not be working and all the responsibility is on you, yeah, you may have had a little bit of a break, but that's going to be there the next day, right? What about school fees for kids? Different events, excursions that they need to go on. What about you see the news? Interest rates are going to maybe bump twice more before the end of the year. You already know what your set point is. What does that then do to you? What does it do to your relationship? Yeah, those issues are going to be there. So you can go take your edible, you can go have a smoke, but it's going to be there the next day. Also be mindful, it could amplify. So if you have that THC dominant product and you don't get this divine creative experience that you want to get, and what it could do is just show you straight to your face what the issues are and give you a smack of reality. Not necessarily a bad thing, and it can lead you to that position of growth. New perspectives also resets nature. Can be wonderful medicine. Go for that walk, go for that swim, go for that hike. Go stare at the mountain. Go do something with friends. Get out. Awesome. Reset. What else comes up for you in terms of new perspectives? How do you get new perspectives? What does coping look like? Maybe it's fasting. It's a bit extreme. But what happens with fasting as well? If you're not used to it, or you are used to it, maybe it adds a little bit of irritability to your situation. Maybe you get a little bit more stressed. Maybe you don't control the anger. So fasting can amplify, like we talked about with psychedelics. So what is that going to do? Maybe that's not the best thing for yourself either. But be mindful. Maybe it builds the discipline that is required. The other one is exercise. What happens if you just go sweat it out? What happens if you use a scale? Whereas it's a minimum 20 minutes a day where you're sweating. And every little increase, so your slide scale, moving up to a 5 or a 6 out of 10, well, that means I need to do an extra 5 to 10 minutes. That means that there's an equation for you to consider. The harder it gets, the more you're going to then compensate. And what's going to be interesting is to then understand, what does that then do for how you're coping and how much distance you have from the problem to then get into a situation where you may get a new perspective on the problem, or what you may do is just get day by day. I remember when I had cancer and I was walking up this hill with my sister-in-law. She was big and pregnant, later stages of the final trimester, and I'd just been operated on, and we'll go on and watch Dallas Buyers Club of all movies. A bit of a tearjerker at times, and both of us just saw where the car was parked and we had to get up there, and it was just step by step, guiding each other, supporting each other, just getting through it. And that is the biggest thing, right? There's no set way. All you can do is get through it. To get through it, what I believe you need to do from where I've been, it's not about just wearing a shirt. It's not about wearing a shirt, but what it's about is doing anything you can do to get through it. And so getting through it, I believe it's understanding it. And that can be talking, it can be writing about it, it could be praying. There is always someone there if you are that way inclined. I remember I was doing a workshop years ago, and this lady said to me, at times I've got nothing else to do but to throw it to God. And if you're in a situation where your back's against the wall and you are in a dark place, you know that you'll do anything. So understand your situation via any means that you have. And at the same time, how do you get new perspectives, i.e. distance from your problems? And that can be the different pathways that we spoke about. And there are different examples for you to have in terms of macro dosing, could be micro dosing. But again, be mindful, they amplify. So if you've already got that little bit of stress, you haven't controlled your day, are you going to get unhinged? Or are you going to get this good result? Only you're going to know, and it's going to be trial and error. Maybe it's a combination of these things. And you know what? There's a tool called On Tracker, purpose-built for you to understand daily changes that can occur that can seem insignificant, but allows you to process, think, and take action in your day, every day, to understand how you can feel better for longer. At On Tracker, we want you to feel your best. This is just a little bit of information for you to consider in your day, being mindful of where we are currently positioned so that you can take that next step and you can keep on going. This was Chad from Higher Living. Love to hear your thoughts. Please share, subscribe, and leave any comments. Thank you very much.